The funeral home smelled like cheap lilies and expensive lies. I stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd of mourners who'd come to pay their respects to my mother, Eleanor Vanton. Most of them were here for the free food and gossip. My wife Meira sat in the front row, checking her phone every 30 seconds like she was expecting a call from the Lottery Commission. "Thank you all for coming," I began, adjusting my tie. Mom would have appreciated seeing so many familiar faces, even if half of you only showed up because you heard there might be an open bar. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the chapel. Meira shot me a warning look, but I wasn't in the mood for her disapproval. Not today. Eleanor Vanton lived in the same house for 43 years, I continued. She raised me there after my father was gone, worked double shifts at the hospital to keep the lights on, and never once complained about the leaky roof or the furnace that sounded like a struggling walrus. More genuine laughter this time. I caught sight of my mother's neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. She was frugal, stubborn, and had opinions about everything from politics to the proper way to fold fitted sheets, but she was also generous, loyal, and... Excuse me. Meira's voice cut through my eulogy like a buzzsaw. She stood up, smoothing her black dress that probably cost more than my mother's monthly grocery budget. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something important we need to discuss." The room shifted uncomfortably. Funeral director Valerie Morrison looked mortified, wringing her hands near the back wall. "Meira, this isn't the time. Actually, it's the perfect time." She turned to address the crowd with that practiced smile she used on potential real estate clients. "Since everyone's here, I wanted to let you know that we've made the difficult decision to sell Eleanor's house. The memories are just too painful for Orion to bear." My jaw tightened. We'd never discussed selling the house. In fact, I'd explicitly told her I wanted to keep it. "The good news is, I've already found a buyer," Meira announced cheerfully. "A lovely developer who's going to turn it into luxury condominiums. The sale should close within the month." Murmurs spread through the chapel. I saw my mother's longtime friend, Linda Rowe, nodding approvingly from the third row, like she'd known this was coming. "Meira," I said quietly, "sit down." "Oh, don't be modest, honey. I know change is hard, but this is what's best for our future. The house is worth at least $400,000, and with my real estate connections, I negotiated an excellent price. We'll be able to pay off our credit cards, take that European vacation we've been talking about, maybe even buy that boat you've always wanted." I'd never mentioned wanting a boat. Ever. "The paperwork is already drawn up," she continued, pulling a folder from her oversized purse. "I just need Orion to sign, and we can put this whole sad chapter behind us." The chapel was completely quiet now. Even the air conditioning seemed to have stopped humming. I looked at my wife's expectant face, then at the crowd of people who'd come to honor my mother's memory, and felt something cold settle in my chest. "That's interesting," I said calmly, reaching for my briefcase, "because I have some paperwork of my own." I pulled out a manila envelope and extracted several official-looking documents. "This is Mom's last will and testament, filed with the county clerk just 6 weeks ago. Would you like me to read the relevant section?" Meira's smile faltered slightly. "Orion, we can discuss this later." "To my beloved son, Orion James Vanton," I read aloud, my voice carrying clearly through the Willure Chapel's sound system. "I leave my entire estate, including my house at 1247 Maple Street, all personal property contained therein, my savings and checking accounts, my life insurance policy, and any other assets I may possess at the time of my passing." I looked up at Meira, whose face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. "And here's the really interesting part," I continued. Quote, "To my son's wife, Meira Catherine Vanton, I leave nothing, as I have observed her true character and find her unworthy of any portion of what I have worked my entire life to build. She is a gold-digging opportunist who married my son for financial gain, and I will not reward her greed with my legacy." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Meira stood frozen, her mouth slightly open, still holding her useless sales contract. "The will was witnessed by 3 people and notarized," I added helpfully. "It's completely legal and binding." But I wasn't finished. Not even close. I reached into my briefcase again and pulled out a small remote control. Since we're all here together, I thought you might be interested in seeing something else I found while going through Mom's things. I pressed a button, and the chapel's projection screen flickered to life. The image was grainy but clear enough. Security camera footage from inside my mother's house. Time-stamped just 2 weeks ago. On the screen, Meira could be seen rifling through my mother's jewelry box, stuffing items into her purse. The timestamp showed she'd been there for over an hour, going through drawers, closets, even checking behind picture frames. Mom installed a security system last year, I explained conversationally. She was worried about break-ins. Turns out she was right to be concerned, just wrong about where the threat was coming from. The footage continued, showing Meira on her phone, clearly agitated. The audio was muffled, but you could make out fragments. He has to be here somewhere, and told me she kept cash in the house. This was recorded while Mom was in the hospital, I said. She gave me the only spare key, but somehow you managed to get in anyway. Want to explain how that happened? Meira finally found her voice. I was looking for her insurance papers. To help with the hospital bills. In her jewelry box? I thought she might have kept them there. The footage switched to another angle, showing Meira in the basement, moving boxes and checking behind the water heater. Her phone rang, and this time the audio was clearer. Yes, Senator, I'm looking now, she said. She told Orion she had documents about the pension fund, but I can't find anything. Are you sure she kept them here? The chapel erupted. Senator Drake Torrin had been all over the local news lately, something about campaign finance irregularities. And here was my wife, apparently working with him to find something in my mother's house. I let the footage run for another minute, showing Meira photographing documents with her phone, before finally turning off the projection. So, I said, folding up the will and putting it back in my briefcase. About that house sale. The funeral reception was awkward, to put it mildly. Half the guests couldn't stop staring at Meira, who'd retreated to a corner table and was frantically texting someone. The other half kept approaching me with variations of, I always knew something was off about that girl. Linda Rowe, Meira's best friend and partner in whatever scheme they'd been running, made a beeline for me near the coffee station. Orion, honey, I think there's been a misunderstanding, she said in her syrupy HR manager voice. Meira was just trying to help. Your mother was so confused those last few weeks, and with all the medical expenses... Linda, stop talking. I stirred sugar into my coffee, keeping my voice level. Whatever you and my wife have been planning, it's over. The house isn't for sale, and neither is anything else that belonged to my mother. But surely you can see that keeping that big old house doesn't make financial sense. The maintenance costs alone are none of your business. I turned to face her fully. And neither is anything else related to my family's affairs. I'd suggest you focus on your own problems. Her face flushed. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm a biotech researcher, Linda. I know how to analyze data, and the data suggests you and Meira have been very busy lately. Before she could respond, I walked away, leaving her standing there with her mouth hanging open. The truth was, I'd been suspicious of Meira for months. Little things at first. Unexplained absences, hushed phone calls, sudden interest in my mother's finances. When Mom got sick, Meira had volunteered to handle all the insurance paperwork and medical appointments. I'd thought she was being helpful. Now I realized she'd been positioning herself. That evening, I sat in my mother's kitchen, going through the security footage on her computer. The system was more sophisticated than I'd initially realized. Mom had cameras in every room, motion sensors, and audio recording capabilities. She'd been documenting everything. The footage from the past 3 months painted a disturbing picture. Meira had been visiting the house regularly, always when she thought I was at work. Sometimes Linda was with her. Once they'd brought a man I didn't recognize. Tall, silver-haired, expensive suit. He'd spent considerable time in Mom's home office, photographing documents and copying files onto a flash drive. I paused the video and enhanced the image. The man's face was partially obscured, but I caught a glimpse of his license plate as he left. Government tags. Senatorial plates. My phone buzzed with a text from Meira. We need to talk. This is ridiculous. I ignored it and kept watching the footage. 3 weeks ago, the same man had returned with 2 associates. They'd spent hours in the basement, moving boxes and examining what looked like financial records. My mother had kept meticulous records of everything: taxes, investments, pension contributions from her 40 years as a hospital administrator. But why would Senator Torrin be interested in a retired nurse's pension records? I pulled up my mother's financial files on her computer. She'd been surprisingly tech-savvy for someone her age, keeping digital copies of everything. Her pension fund had been managed by Midwest Healthcare Retirement Services, a company that handled benefits for several hospital systems across 3 states. A quick internet search revealed that Midwest Healthcare had been under federal investigation for the past year. Something about missing funds and improper investment practices. The investigation had stalled, though, due to lack of documentation. My mother's files contained 40 years of pension statements, contribution records, and correspondence with fund managers. If there had been irregularities, she would have documented them. She documented everything. I found what I was looking for in a folder labeled Pension Concerns. Mom had been tracking discrepancies in her statements for over 2 years. Contributions that didn't match her pay stubs, investment returns that seemed too good to be true, fees that kept increasing without explanation, but more importantly, she'd been corresponding with other retirees who'd noticed similar problems. There were dozens of emails, all detailing the same issues: missing money, falsified records, investments that didn't exist. The total amount of missing funds, according to Mom's calculations, was over $2.4 million. And according to her notes, she'd been planning to turn everything over to federal investigators the week she went into the hospital. My phone rang. Meira's name appeared on the screen. "Hello, darling," I answered. "Don't you darling me. What was that stunt you pulled today?" "I read Mom's will. At her funeral. Seemed appropriate." "You humiliated me in front of everyone. And that footage, where did that come from?" "Security cameras. Mom was worried about burglars." "I was trying to help. Someone had to handle her affairs while you were busy feeling sorry for yourself." I almost laughed. "Is that what you call it? Rifling through her jewelry box and photographing her financial records?" Silence on the other end. "Who's your friend with the government plates, Meira?" More silence. "The tall guy with the silver hair who's been visiting Mom's house. The one who brought friends to go through her basement. Ring any bells?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Senator Torrin. That's who you were talking to on the phone, wasn't it? When you said you couldn't find the documents he was looking for." I heard her sharp intake of breath. "You're being paranoid, Orion. Grief makes people imagine things." "Maybe. Or maybe you and your friends thought a sick old woman would be an easy target. Maybe you figured you could steal her evidence before she turned it over to the feds." "That's insane." "Is it? Because I've got 40 years of pension records here, Meira. Records that show exactly how much money has been stolen from healthcare workers' retirement funds. Records that certain people would pay a lot of money to make disappear." The line went quiet for so long, I thought she'd hung up. "Where are you?" she finally asked. "Mom's house. Going through her things." "I'm coming over. We need to discuss this like adults." "Actually, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm expecting company." "What kind of company?" "The federal kind. Turns out Mom had already contacted the FBI about the pension fund irregularities. They're very interested in her documentation." I was lying, but Meira didn't know that. "You called the FBI?" "I didn't have to. They called me. Apparently Mom had an appointment scheduled with them for next week. The appointment she couldn't keep because someone made sure she wouldn't be around to keep it." Another long silence. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Mom was scheduled to testify about pension fund fraud. She had evidence that could send people to prison, and then she conveniently passed away before she could talk." "She had a heart attack." "Did she? Because I've been looking at her medical records, and her cardiologist says her heart was fine. Strong as an ox," he said. "No history of cardiac problems." This was also a lie, but I was on a roll. "You're losing your mind," Meira said, but her voice shook slightly. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally seeing clearly for the first time in 3 years." I hung up and immediately called Detective Hannah James, a family friend who'd worked with my mother on several hospital security cases over the years. "Hannah? It's Orion Vanton. I need to report a break-in." Detective James arrived 20 minutes later, along with a crime scene technician and a very tired-looking sergeant. I'd known Hannah since high school, she'd dated my cousin briefly, and had always been straight with me about everything from parking tickets to my mother's concerns about hospital security. "Orion, I'm sorry about your mother," she said, shaking my hand. "Eleanor was good people. What's this about a break-in?" I showed her the security footage. All of it. Meira's multiple unauthorized visits, the mysterious men with government plates, the systematic search of the house. Hannah's expression grew darker with each clip. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "At least 3 months, based on what I've found so far. Maybe longer." "And you had no idea your wife was coming here?" "None. She told me she was showing houses or meeting clients. I had no reason to doubt her." The technician was dusting for fingerprints while we talked. "Detective, you need to see this," he called from the basement. We followed him downstairs, where he was standing near what used to be my father's workshop. The pegboard where Dad had hung his tools was bare, and several storage cabinets had been emptied. "Looks like they were searching for something specific," the tech said. "See how they moved everything systematically? This wasn't random vandalism." Hannah examined the disturbed area carefully. "Your mother ever mention keeping anything valuable down here?" "Just Dad's old tools and some Christmas decorations. Nothing worth—" I stopped mid-sentence. In the corner, behind the water heater, I could see that one of the basement's concrete blocks had been removed. The space behind it was hollow. "Hannah, look at this." We approached the hidden compartment together. Inside was a metal strongbox about the size of a briefcase. It was heavy and locked with a combination that I didn't know. "Should we call for a locksmith?" I asked. "Let's try your mother's birthday first," Hannah suggested. The lock clicked open on the second try, Mom's birth year instead of the full date. Inside the box were documents, lots of them, financial records, correspondence, and what looked like investigative reports. But underneath the papers was something I definitely hadn't expected. A handgun, a .38 revolver, well-maintained and fully loaded. "Your mother have a carry permit?" Hannah asked. "Not that I know of. She hated guns." Hannah carefully removed the weapon and checked the serial number. "This is registered to Eleanor Vanton. Permit issued 18 months ago." I stared at the gun in disbelief. She never said anything about buying a weapon. "People don't usually advertise when they're scared," Hannah said gently. "What else is in here?" I pulled out the documents. The top folder was labeled Insurance Policy in my mother's careful handwriting. Inside were copies of emails between her and FBI agent Patricia Morse, dated over the past 6 months. The emails detailed my mother's concerns about the pension fund and her willingness to testify in federal court. Agent Morse had been building a case against Midwest Healthcare Retirement Services and needed documentation from long-term contributors to prove the fraud. But the most interesting email was the most recent one, sent just 3 days before Mom went into the hospital. "Agent Morse, I believe my house is being watched. My daughter-in-law has been asking unusual questions about my financial records, and I've seen unfamiliar cars parked on my street. I'm concerned that someone knows about our investigation. I've moved all documentation to a secure location and purchased protection. If something happens to me, please contact my son immediately. Eleanor Vanton." Hannah read over my shoulder. She was scared. Scared enough to buy a gun and hide evidence in the basement. "We need to call Agent Morse." While Hannah made the call, I continued going through the documents. Mom had been thorough in her investigation. She'd identified 12 other retirees whose pension funds had been systematically drained. She'd documented shell companies and fake investment schemes. She'd even traced some of the missing money to political campaign contributions, including substantial donations to Senator Drake Torrin's re-election fund. The technician called from upstairs. "Detective, you need to see what I found in the bedroom closet." We climbed back upstairs to find him standing in Mom's bedroom, staring into her walk-in closet. He'd moved aside some hanging clothes to reveal another hidden compartment, this one built into the wall. Inside were more weapons, a lot more weapons. 2 rifles, a shotgun, several boxes of ammunition, and what looked like military-grade communication equipment. There were also photographs, surveillance shots of men I didn't recognize, license plate numbers, and detailed notes about their activities. "Your mother was conducting her own investigation," Hannah said, examining the photos. "These look like federal agents, or people pretending to be federal agents." One of the photographs showed the silver-haired man I'd seen on the security footage. Mom had written Senator's Security Chief, Marcus Webb, on the back. Another photo showed Meira and Linda meeting with Webb in a restaurant parking lot. The timestamp indicated it was taken just 2 weeks ago. She was watching them, I realized. Mom knew what they were planning. Hannah's phone rang. She answered it, spoke briefly, then turned back to me with a grim expression. "Agent Morse is driving down from Chicago. She'll be here in 3 hours. In the meantime, we need to secure this scene and get you somewhere safe." "Safe? Why wouldn't I be safe?" "Because if your mother was right about being watched, and if she really did have evidence that could bring down a sitting senator, then the people who wanted her quiet might not be finished." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Stop digging or join your mother." Hannah saw the message and immediately called for backup. "Pack a bag," she told me. "You're not staying here tonight." Agent Patricia Morse arrived with 2 other federal agents and a mobile crime lab. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and the kind of focused intensity that made you believe she'd been hunting bad guys since kindergarten. "Mr. Vanton, I'm sorry for your loss," she said, shaking my hand. "Your mother was helping us build a very important case." "How important?" "Important enough that some very powerful people wanted her silenced." We sat in Mom's kitchen while her team processed the basement and bedroom. Agent Morse had brought copies of all the emails she'd exchanged with my mother, along with additional evidence they'd gathered independently. "Midwest Healthcare Retirement Services has been operating a Ponzi scheme for over 5 years, she explained. They've stolen approximately $12 million from healthcare workers' pension funds across 3 states. Your mother's documentation was crucial because she'd kept records going back decades. But why would Senator Torrin be involved? Because he's been receiving campaign contributions from the stolen money. Not directly. It's been laundered through several shell companies and PACs. But we can trace it back to the pension funds. Agent Morse pulled out a thick folder. Your mother provided us with evidence that Torrin knew about the fraud. She recorded several phone conversations between your wife and someone she identified as the senator's chief of staff. Meira was recording her own conversations? No. Your mother was recording Meira's conversations. She'd bugged her own house. I stared at her. She what? Every room has listening devices, professional-grade equipment. Your mother was more paranoid than we initially realized, but it turns out she had good reason to be. Agent Morse played an audio file on her laptop. Meira's voice came through clearly. Marcus, she's getting suspicious. She asked me directly about the pension fund yesterday, and she mentioned talking to federal agents. A man's voice responded, Then we need to accelerate our timeline. How much longer do the doctors think she has? Could be weeks, maybe longer if she responds to treatment. That's too long. We need those documents now, and we need her unable to testify. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you what needs to happen. The recording ended. I felt sick. When was this recorded? I asked. 4 days before your mother went into the hospital. Are you saying that Meira? We're saying your wife was part of a conspiracy to obstruct a federal investigation. Whether that conspiracy included harming your mother is something we're still investigating. Detective James, who'd been quiet during this exchange, finally spoke up. Orion, I think you should know. I called your mother's doctor, Dr. Trent Ardell. He's agreed to meet with us tomorrow morning. Why? Because Agent Morse asked me to request a copy of your mother's medical records, and Dr. Ardell seemed nervous about that request. Very nervous. Agent Morse nodded. In cases like this, we always examine the medical circumstances surrounding a key witness's passing, especially when that witness was scheduled to testify and had expressed concerns about their safety. You think someone hurt my mother? I think your mother was a healthy 72-year-old woman who suffered a sudden, unexpected cardiac event just days before she was supposed to provide testimony that could have sent several people to prison. That's worth investigating. My phone rang. Meira again. Agent Morse gestured for me to answer it, then activated a recording app on her own phone. Hello, Meira. Where are you? I went by the house, and there are police cars everywhere. There was a break-in. I'm at the police station filing a report. A break-in? Was anything stolen? Interesting question. Not, are you okay? Or, do you need me to come down there? But was anything stolen? They're still investigating. Why? I'm worried about you. You've been acting strange since the funeral. Strange how? All these accusations about Senator Torrin and conspiracy theories. It's not like you. Maybe you don't know me as well as you thought. Orion, please, come home. We can work through this together. I don't think that's a good idea right now. Why not? Because I don't trust you. Silence on her end. I found Mom's evidence, Meira. All of it. The pension fund fraud, the campaign contributions, the recordings of your conversations with Marcus Webb. I know what you've been doing. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You married me to get access to Mom's financial records. You've been feeding information to Torrin's people for months. And when Mom figured it out and decided to cooperate with the FBI, you helped them make sure she couldn't testify. That's insane. I loved your mother. You loved the idea of inheriting her house and selling it to pay off your credit card debt, but that's not going to happen now. Orion, listen to me carefully. You're in over your head. These people don't play games. If you keep pushing this, you're going to get hurt. Is that a threat? It's a warning. From someone who cares about you. If you cared about me, you wouldn't have spent the last year plotting to steal from my family. I hung up and looked at Agent Morse, who'd been taking notes throughout the conversation. She's scared, the agent observed. Good. She should be. No, Mr. Vanton. You should be scared too. Your wife just warned you that these people don't play games. That suggests she knows something about what they're capable of. Detective James leaned forward. Orion, I've arranged for you to stay at a safe house tonight. Agent Morse thinks it's necessary. For how long? Until we can make some arrests, Agent Morse said. Your mother's evidence is solid, but we need to move quickly. If Torrin's people realize how much we know, they might try to destroy evidence or eliminate witnesses. Eliminate witnesses? Your mother expressed concerns about her safety. She's gone. You're now the person with access to all her evidence. Do the math. I did the math, and I didn't like the answer. Dr. Trent Ardell's medical office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. Not exactly where you'd expect to find someone involved in a federal conspiracy, but then again, nothing about this situation was what I'd expected. Agent Morse and Detective James flanked me as we entered the waiting room. Dr. Ardell had agreed to meet us before his regular office hours, which meant we had the place to ourselves. He was waiting in his office, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Mid-40s, thinning hair, nervous hands that wouldn't stop fidgeting with his pen. Dr. Ardell, thank you for meeting with us, Agent Morse began. We'd like to discuss Eleanor Vanton's medical treatment. I've been expecting this call, he said quietly. Have you? Ever since she passed, I knew someone would eventually ask questions. Agent Morse pulled out a digital recorder. Do you mind if we record this conversation? Dr. Ardell stared at the device for a long moment, then nodded. Actually, I think I'd prefer it. I've been carrying this around for 2 weeks, and I can't do it anymore. Carrying what around? The truth about what happened to Eleanor. My stomach clenched. What truth? Dr. Ardell looked directly at me. Your mother didn't have a heart attack, Orion. She had an allergic reaction, a severe one. Allergic reaction to what? Shellfish. Someone gave her shellfish, knowing she was severely allergic. Agent Morse leaned forward. How do you know this? Because I falsified her medical records. I listed the cause of her passing as cardiac arrest when I knew it was anaphylactic shock from shellfish exposure. The room went completely quiet, except for the hum of the air conditioning. Why would you do that? Detective James asked. Because Marcus Webb paid me $50,000 to do it. Dr. Ardell's voice was barely above a whisper. He said it would help avoid complications with her life insurance policy. He said the family would benefit from a quick, clean resolution. Marcus Webb approached you directly? He came to my office 3 days before Eleanor was admitted to the hospital. He said he knew she was sick, and he knew she had information that could hurt some important people. He offered me money to make sure that if anything happened to her, it would look natural. I found my voice. You're saying someone murdered my mother. I'm saying someone who knew about her shellfish allergy made sure she was exposed to it while she was in a weakened state. Her immune system couldn't handle the reaction. Agent Morse was taking rapid notes. Do you have any evidence of this payment from Webb? Dr. Ardell opened his desk drawer and pulled out a bank deposit slip. $50,000 deposited into my account the day after I signed Eleanor's medical certificate. I kept the documentation because I knew this day would come. Who had access to your mother's hospital room? Detective James asked me. Family members. Meira visited every day. She brought food sometimes, said the hospital meals were terrible. Dr. Ardell nodded grimly. Your wife brought Eleanor lunch on her last day, claimed it was from her favorite restaurant. Eleanor mentioned it to me. She was touched that Meira had remembered her favorite seafood place. Her favorite seafood place? I stared at him. Mom was allergic to shellfish. She would never eat at a seafood restaurant. That's what I told Webb when he approached me. I said Eleanor would never voluntarily consume shellfish. He said that wouldn't be a problem. The implications hit me like a truck. Meira had deliberately brought my mother food containing shellfish, knowing it would trigger a potentially fatal allergic reaction. Did you report this to anyone? Agent Morse asked Dr. Ardell. Who was I going to report it to? A senator's chief of staff had just paid me $50,000 to cover up a crime. I was already in too deep. But you're reporting it now. Because I can't live with it anymore. Eleanor Vanton was a good woman. She didn't deserve what happened to her, and her son doesn't deserve to be lied to about how she passed. Agent Morse closed her notebook. Dr. Ardell, you're going to need to come with us to make a formal statement, and we'll need you to testify before a federal grand jury. I understand. You realize this makes you an accessory to homicide? I realize I should have spoken up 2 weeks ago. As we prepared to leave, Dr. Ardell turned to me one more time. Orion, I want you to know that your mother talked about you constantly. She was so proud of your work, your integrity. She said you were the one person she could trust completely. She was wrong, I said bitterly. If she could trust me completely, I would have protected her. You couldn't have known. I should have known. I lived with Meira for 3 years. I should have seen what she was. Agent Morse put a hand on my shoulder. Mr. Vanton, your mother saw it. That's why she took all those precautions, why she documented everything, why she hid evidence and bought weapons. She knew she couldn't trust your wife, but she also knew she couldn't tell you without putting you in danger too. So she handled it alone? She handled it like the strong, smart woman she was. And because of her preparation, we're going to be able to get justice for her. As we walked out of Dr. Ardell's office, my phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. Last warning, stop now or join Eleanor. This time, I showed the message to Agent Morse immediately. We're accelerating the timeline, she said, pulling out her own phone. I'm calling for a tactical team. We're making arrests today. The FBI tactical team assembled at a command post 3 blocks from Senator Torrin's campaign headquarters. Agent Morse had obtained federal warrants for Torrin, Marcus Webb, Meira, and Linda Rowe based on Dr. Ardell's confession and my mother's evidence. We're going to hit all 4 locations simultaneously, Agent Morse explained. Torrin's office, Webb's residence, your house for your wife, and Linda Rowe's apartment. We can't give them time to coordinate or destroy evidence. I was assigned to ride with Detective James to observe Meira's arrest. Part of me wanted to be there when they took her into custody. Another part of me never wanted to see her again. You don't have to watch this, Detective James said as we parked across the street from my house. You could wait in the car. No, I need to see it. 2 FBI agents approached the front door while others positioned themselves around the back of the house. Agent Morse knocked firmly. Federal agents, we have a warrant. The door opened and Meira appeared, still in her bathrobe despite it being nearly noon. Her hair was disheveled and she looked like she hadn't slept. Meira Catherine Vanton, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, and accessory to homicide. Homicide? Meira's voice cracked. What are you talking about? You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As they handcuffed her, Meira spotted me sitting in the detective's car. Her expression shifted from confusion to fury. Orion, she shouted. You don't know what you're doing. These people will destroy you. You have the right to an attorney, the agent continued. I was trying to protect you, Meira screamed as they led her toward their vehicle. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. I watched them put her in the back of the FBI car, feeling nothing but emptiness. 3 years of marriage, and it had all been a lie. My phone rang. Agent Morse. We got Torrin and Webb, she said. Both in custody. Linda Rowe is fighting extradition from her sister's house in Wisconsin, but we'll have her by tomorrow. What happens now? Now we build the case. With Dr. Ardell's testimony, your mother's evidence, and the recording she made, we have enough to put all of them away for a very long time. How long? Torrin is looking at 20 to life for racketeering and conspiracy to commit homicide. Webb will probably get 15 to 20 as an accessory. Your wife. That depends on what she's willing to tell us about her role in your mother's demise. I hung up and sat in the detective's car, watching FBI agents search my house. Everything I'd thought I knew about my life had been a lie. My wife, my home, even my mother's final weeks. All of it corrupted by greed and politics. Detective James returned to the car with a box of evidence they'd seized from the house. They found some interesting things, she said. Your wife had copies of all your mother's financial records hidden in your bedroom closet. Also found correspondence with several real estate developers about selling the house, even though she knew she wouldn't inherit it. Apparently she thought she could contest the will. She'd already consulted with 3 different attorneys about challenging it on the grounds that your mother was mentally incompetent. Mom was sharp as a tack until the day she went into the hospital. Your wife didn't know that. She assumed the cancer had affected your mother's cognitive abilities. I thought about all the times Meira had suggested Mom was confused or not thinking clearly. I'd dismissed it as concern, but she'd been building a case to steal my inheritance. There's something else, Detective James said carefully. Agent Morse asked me to tell you. They found evidence that your marriage might not have been as accidental as you thought. What do you mean? Meira had a file on you going back 4 years, before you even met her. Information about your job, your mother's health, your family's financial situation. Someone had been researching you for a long time before she showed up in your life. The implications were staggering. You're saying she targeted me specifically? I'm saying someone identified you as a mark, and your wife was recruited to marry you for access to your mother's information. Recruited by who? We're still investigating that. But Webb's financial records show payments to a private investigation firm that specializes in what they call relationship facilitation. Basically, they identify wealthy targets and arrange for attractive people to seduce them. I felt like I was going to be sick. So none of it was real, not from the beginning. I'm sorry, Orion. I know this is a lot to process. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Morse. Need you at Federal Building. Important development. The Federal Building in downtown was buzzing with activity. Agent Morse met me at security and escorted me to a conference room where Dr. Ardell was waiting with his attorney. Mr. Vanton, Dr. Ardell has provided additional information that you need to hear, Agent Morse said. Dr. Ardell looked even more haggard than he had that morning. Orion, there's something else I need to tell you, something about your adoption. My adoption? Your mother asked me to keep this confidential, but given the circumstances, he pulled out a thick medical file. Eleanor wasn't just investigating pension fund fraud. She was also investigating your biological family. I stared at him. Why? Because 18 months ago, a woman contacted her claiming to be your biological sister. The woman said she'd been searching for you for years, and she had information about why you were put up for adoption. Agent Morse leaned forward. What kind of information? Your biological parents were lost in a car accident when you were 2 years old, but you had an older sister who was placed with a different family. She's been searching for you ever since she turned 18. What does this have to do with the pension fund case? Dr. Ardell exchanged glances with Agent Morse. Because your biological sister is Nessa Halvor. She works for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. She's been investigating Midwest Healthcare Retirement Services for 3 years. The room seemed to spin. My sister is an FBI agent? She's Agent Morse's partner, Dr. Ardell continued, and she's the one who originally approached your mother about cooperating with the federal investigation. Agent Morse nodded. Nessa has been working undercover, trying to identify all the victims of the pension fund fraud. When she discovered that Eleanor Vanton was one of the affected retirees, she realized Eleanor might be her brother's adoptive mother. So Mom knew I had a sister? She knew, and she was planning to tell you after the federal case was resolved. She didn't want to complicate the investigation by revealing the family connection. Where is she now? This sister? She's been working undercover in Senator Torrin's office for the past 6 months, Agent Morse said. She's the one who provided us with most of our intelligence about the conspiracy. A woman entered the conference room. Mid-30s, dark hair, sharp eyes that looked remarkably familiar. She was carrying a thick file folder and wearing a federal agent's badge. Orion, she said simply. I'm Nessa. I stared at her, looking for resemblances. The eyes, definitely. The shape of her face. Something about the way she held herself. You're my sister. I'm your sister, and I'm sorry we had to meet under these circumstances. She sat down across from me and opened her file folder. I've been investigating this case for 3 years, but I didn't know you existed until 18 months ago. When I found out Eleanor Vanton had an adopted son, I had to confirm it was really you. How? Medical records, birth certificates. And eventually I approached Eleanor directly. She was suspicious at first, but when I showed her proof of our relationship, she agreed to help with the investigation. She never said anything to me, because I asked her not to. I was deep undercover in Torrin's organization, and any family connection could have blown my cover. Agent Morse pulled out another file. Nessa has been documenting the conspiracy from the inside. She has recordings of Torrin ordering the theft of pension funds, authorizing payments to keep victims quiet, and eventually planning to eliminate Eleanor as a witness. You heard them planning to hurt Mom? Nessa's expression darkened. I heard Torrin tell Webb to handle the Eleanor problem permanently. I tried to warn her, but she was already in the hospital by then. I thought she'd be safe there. But Meira had access. Your wife was the perfect inside person. She could visit Eleanor without suspicion, bring her food, even influence her medical care if necessary. I felt a surge of anger. You knew Meira was involved and you didn't warn me? I tried to warn Eleanor, but she said she couldn't tell you without putting you in danger too. She was protecting you. By letting me stay married to someone capable of that? By gathering evidence to put those responsible behind bars, Nessa said firmly. Eleanor was braver than any of us realized. She kept cooperating with the investigation even after she knew she was at serious risk. Agent Morse spread out a series of photographs on the table. These are surveillance photos Nessa took from inside Torrin's office. They show the planning meetings for the conspiracy against your mother. The photos showed Meira, Linda, Webb, and Senator Torrin in what appeared to be a private office. They were looking at documents and pointing at what looked like a map of my mother's neighborhood. They were planning this for weeks, Nessa explained. Torrin was desperate to stop Eleanor from testifying. The pension fund fraud was just the beginning. We've discovered evidence of money laundering, campaign finance violations, and connections to organized crime. How much money are we talking about? Over $50 million, stolen from healthcare workers' retirement funds across 8 states. Eleanor's case was just one piece of a much larger criminal enterprise. I looked at the photos again, focusing on Meira's face. She looked engaged, interested, like she was enjoying the planning session. She really did marry me just to get access to Mom's information. The marriage was arranged, Nessa confirmed. Webb's people identified you as Eleanor's heir and most likely confidant. They needed someone who could get close to both of you, monitor Eleanor's activities, and eventually gain access to her financial records. How long were they planning this? At least 2 years, possibly longer. Agent Morse gathered up the photographs. The good news is that we have enough evidence to prosecute everyone involved. The bad news is that this case is going to take months to resolve, and you'll need to testify in federal court. What about Meira? She's already asking for a plea deal, Agent Morse said. Her attorney contacted us an hour ago. She's willing to testify against Torrin and Webb in exchange for a reduced sentence. How reduced? Probably 8 to 10 years instead of life. I thought about my mother, alone in her hospital bed, trusting the woman who was about to betray her in the worst possible way. No deal, I said. Mr. Vanton, a plea agreement would guarantee convictions for the more serious offenders. I said no deal. Meira helped murder my mother. She doesn't get to bargain her way out of that. Nessa reached across the table and took my hand. Orion, I know this is emotional, but we need to think strategically. If Meira testifies, we can put Torrin away forever. And if she doesn't testify? Then we rely on the evidence we have, which is still substantial. I looked at my sister who'd been working for 3 years to get justice for people like my mother, who'd gone undercover and risked her life to expose this conspiracy. What do you think Mom would want? I think Eleanor would want justice for all the victims, not just revenge against one person. But she'd also want the person responsible to face the full consequences. Nessa nodded slowly. Yes, she would. I turned to Agent Morse. How strong is the case without Meira's testimony? Strong enough. We have Dr. Ardell's confession, Eleanor's recordings, Nessa's undercover evidence, and financial records showing the money trail. It's not guaranteed, but it's solid. Then we go to trial, all of them, no deals. Agent Morse made a note in her file. I'll inform the prosecutor's office of your position. There's one more thing, Nessa said. Eleanor left something for you. She gave it to me before she went into the hospital in case something happened to her. She pulled out a sealed envelope with my name written in my mother's careful handwriting. Inside was a short letter. Orion. If you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you about Nessa, about the investigation, about Meira. I was trying to protect you both. The evidence you need is in the basement strongbox. The combination is your father's birthday. Use it to get justice, not just for me, but for all the people who trusted their futures to criminals. I love you, and I'm proud of the man you've become. Take care of your sister, Mom. I looked up at Nessa, who was watching me with tears in her eyes. She really loved you, she said. She talked about you constantly. How proud she was, how worried she was about your marriage, how much she wanted to tell you the truth. I wish she had. She was doing what she thought was best. I know, I wish I could have protected her. You can still protect her legacy. Help us finish what she started. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. What do you need me to do? Agent Morse smiled for the first time since I'd met her. Help us put these people in prison for the rest of their lives. When do we start? We already have.